All right, it's preparing to live stream.
Okay. So are you ready to take it live? Call it order?
Yeah, ready to
Okay.
go.
All right, I'll start the webinar.
Okay. No.
Okay, the webinar has started.
All right. Welcome to the April 2021 meeting of the Clifton Town Council. This is our regularly scheduled meeting held the first Tuesday of each month in accordance with our ordinances and charter. Meetings being held electronically because we're still under emergency due to the pandemic that the governor and the town have both declared. Will continue, people have asked, will continue to meet electronically until the state declares otherwise, which I expect to be sometime from now, but regardless of whether it's short or long, it will be determined by the state. And we've been effective in processing these meetings electronically. Notice was sent out. People have the opportunity to participate electronically, to speak, et cetera, et cetera. So works just as well as an in-person meeting. And we've gotten used to it over the last, I don't even know how long that we've been doing this, 6-8 months probably. So with that intro, we'll turn to our agenda and start with the clerk's report.
I didn't receive any suggested revisions to the March minutes.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted.
Second.
This motion in a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain. I was not here last month.
Okay. Thank you. Motion carries. What else? Clerk? Amanda?
Well, I
Okay.
have.
All right. Treasurer's report.
Okay, hi, everybody. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. The treasurer's report is to cover the financials through March 31st. In our cash balances report, our total funds are $1,357,600. One thing to note is that I transferred $60,000 from the checking account to the money market account just to, have the funds earn some interest, a little bit more interest. So that's noted on the cash report. The update for the COVID report of our transactions related to the CARES grant is that as of March 31st, we had expenditures of $30,000, of course, for the grants that were awarded last summer, and an additional $11,129.17 for town expenditures through that date. The remaining funds that have not been expended as of the end of the month would be $8,636. Anything that is not expended or anticipated to be expended by the end of May, we would need to pay back to the county at that time. So some thoughts are that we should consider other ways that we might utilize those funds between now and the end of the year, and give some thought to that maybe. So anybody wants to come up with some suggestions or ideas, I can pass the ideas through my county meeting and make sure that they would be, acceptable expenditures. I had thought of filtration systems for any of our town facilities, or any other kinds of ideas that people might come up with that would be able to utilize those funds. Otherwise, they will go back. We are looking at receiving 2.7 or 270, I think, $1,000 on the American Relief Fund. I forgot to add a note to this. It hasn't actually been awarded yet, but that's what we're anticipating. We've been told that that's what's earmarked for the county. I mean, for the town, that would be coming directly from the federal government. And that would be for the period of FY21 through December 2024.
Do we know, Marilyn, at all what the parameters of that is? I mean, I know the number, but do we know what this is for?
We don't have anything specific. We have been told by that it, from what the county has been seeing, that they are anticipating that it will include revenue replacement. So, for example, we would identify what our revenues were for certain things, say in FY19. And then we could theoretically say, okay, we had lost revenue from our events. We had lost revenue from
That's great.
maybe the bee polls, I'm not sure. And that sort of thing. There was another one I thought of too, but they haven't actually.
Clifton Day and
Clifton
and
Day, Homes Tour,
the haunted trail. I mean,
the Haunted Trail, yep.
Just to be clear, we had a meeting with our member of Congress's office, and they told us that they currently do not know
Yeah,
what the parameters are for expending the money or when the funds will flow. So that is still to be determined. So we hope it includes revenue relief. It looks like there's a period of time over which to expend it as well. So it's not a rush to spend. There is another program, the Community Project Funding Program.
mhm,
It's also going on. That's not the American Rescue Plan, separate from the 277, where Congress is looking for things they can spend money on right away, and looking for shovel-ready projects that they could expend money on as fast as possible.
mhm.
And so we're talking to our member of Congress's office about that as well, possibly funding for streetscape. And that is different from this American Rescue Plan.
Mhm.
So we'll know more as it evolves in both cases. But the discussion we had, their first question was, what do you expect to spend your American Rescue Plan funding on? And we said, well, a question that goes into that is, what can we spend the money on? And they said we don't know, but we'd appreciate it if you could tell us what you plan to spend it on. So we gave them some ideas about what we were thinking about, possible things which they liked very much.
so Bill, it would be conceivable that, for instance, the pole relocation, could fit in these categories, the utility relocation. Possibly. I know you can't.
Possibly. No. But what's strange is the community project funding, the second one, is actually about building infrastructure.
Yeah.
Including transportation related things.
Mhm.
I'm not sure the American Rescue Plan will actually be related to infrastructure building. So that's the funny thing, that the second one probably would be ideal for this. And we're looking at trying to put information forward. At the end of the day, each member of Congress gets to identify 10 projects that they'd like to see funded.
Oh.
And that's, within Fairfax County, et cetera, but we've thrown our hat in the ring to see if perhaps one of the 10 would be appropriate, because to the extent they want something that's shovel ready to be done by the end of the next fiscal year, there generally aren't that many projects that really are truly shovel ready. Ours actually would fit that category. It certainly is COVID related because of the influx of people that we've had into the community as a result of COVID, this becoming a destination, and the need for people to be separated more and not just a wall of people crowding into each other is forcing people to be all over the place, including often walking out at the roads. And therefore, pedestrian improvements, safety improvements, these would actually link up well to what's going on with COVID. So it's actually an ideal project. The only concern I have is it may not be enough money, because I know they're looking to spend a lot, and our project is reasonably priced. But as
We
part
can
of
fix that. We can fix that.
yeah, right. As
I've
part
got
of
some sidewalks I could mention.
as part of an
Yeah.
overall spectrum of work, though, from larger to smaller and smaller communities to larger communities, I think this would really fit in well and would reflect well on our Congress member and her office to have something like this included. So we'll continue to talk to them on this, but on the 270,000 or whatever it is, we don't have the money yet. Number one, we don't have the money yet. Number two, it's coming directly to us, not through the county, which is probably a mixed blessing,
Yeah,
because we don't have to do the county's work as well as the grant work, but it means we have to do whatever the feds want. However, as I've discussed with Marilyn, in my view, the county will likely work with the towns and, share what their approach is to what they're doing.
The Virginia Municipal League probably has some resources as well that
Probably.
are worth checking out.
That's a good idea, but the county's been very helpful, and they'll continue to be helpful. So one, the funds haven't flowed. Two, they come directly to us. And three, it's not clear what you can use the money for. Although my instinct is it must somehow be related back to COVID. And for revenue replacement, one of the things I saw was creating a baseline year. In other words, what did revenue look like when things were fine? What do they look like now? And that would create a delta that you could work from, but we'll know more. But certainly revenue relief is perfectly appropriate.
Mhm. And then it just kind of goes into the general fund, right?
Well, again, we'll see whether it has to be truly tagged, or I mean, the revenue replacement part will go into the general fund. That's correct. As Marilyn talked about, HVAC for our many town facilities. I think we have one. But who knows? But we have time to think about it. B, we don't have the information to do much with it right now. Even if we had all night to talk about it, we don't have all the information other than the funds are coming. Let me say this. I've heard people say money coming in, build a new art statue celebrating the virtues of humanity or something. We've got a bunch of money. Not literally, I made that up as a hypothetical, but in other words, you've got money, just go spend it on something, number one. Number two, how dare you accept this money? This is a terrible program, and so on and so forth. The practical reality is that the funds for the program come from each of us through our taxes. That's where the money comes. And either the funds that we put in can come in part back to us, and we can determine how best to use them in the best interest of the community, or they'll give the money to someone else. Therefore, it's not really a hard decision. It's not a policy decision. It's a practical decision that we should get, as someone told me, effectively a rebate from funds we're paying into the federal coffers back to us, and we should use it as prudent stewards of funds that come in. So that's what we'll do. We may have a little more juice, if you will, to do some things we'd like to get done, streetscape, whatever, that we usually have. But otherwise, we'll expend town funds in the same prudent way that we always spend town funds. So that's a backdrop, and it becomes an implementation issue. What are the rules? What can we spend it on? Everyone's immediately discussed, how can we work through the rules to be as flexible as possible? You're going to hear all that. But we'll get the rules. We'll look at what we need to do, and we'll figure out the best thing to do with it. With the one thing I truly appreciate, it's not a race to spend money. There are several years laid out. We could spend it all in a short time if that was appropriate, but we have time. We have time.
And
Okay.
we, as we always are, remain open to input.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that, again, it's not a race.
Mhm.
So we'll be thinking about it. We're going through budgeting right now. There's question of what we do with it in the budget. I think my instinct is the reverse of what you might think. I think my instinct is we put a marker in the budget for it, because if it's in the budget, then we can spend it. And it would be in as revenue, like the haunted trail, which might come in the amount we expect or might not. But at least it's picked up there. As opposed to my original conservative view was, we don't have the money today, so we wouldn't put it in. I think the legislation's been passed and approved. We know the money's coming. We don't know all the conditions, but it would seem to me that it would be appropriate to put it in as revenue.
I agree, and we did get a notification that identified the amount specifically that would be going to the town, so.
Right. So that's process stuff, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Other
so
treasure.
one other thing I just wanted to mention about the relief funding that would be coming. They did, in the Fairfax County meeting, it was expressed that there will be a need to certify that the town will accept it at some point. And generally that when that it's going online and just doing the certification that the town will accept it. But I don't know anything more about that. I know we did go through that process when we got the first grant in FY 20. And it's just a formality, but so that will be coming up, and I'll let you all know when that is. So,
Well, it's true that if we certify we're taking it, we are in fact agreeing to take it. And the last time around, they sent us the money. It was
Right.
wired into our account. And about 4 months later, they asked us to agree that we would accept it. It was
right.
customary.
Yeah.
This time the certification may be earlier in the process.
It sounds like it. It sounds like they'll just say, by this date, you must have it certified, and everybody has to scramble in and put it in. That was the impression I was getting from the Fairfax County staff. So once I hear about that, then I think, Bill, if you just give me the authority to go online and do it, or you could go online and do it. And if it needs to be a signature or something,
Yeah, I mean, we'll see
Good
what
to know.
happens. All these programs seem to include, if you don't use it, you can give it back. So, there's lots of reasons to accept the money. But if we have another meeting and this is still going on, we'll report back to the council on it.
right.
All right.
All
What
right.
else?
Other highlights are under other income in the report. You may recall in prior months, the refund from the CARES grant that was refunded back to the town of $10,000 was booked through as other income, which is other income refund, because that's the way we can book it in the system. This month, I went ahead to get a cleaner report. I reclassed that from other income to offset the IDA grant expense, so that the difference between the income and the expenses now will tie out more clean for the quarterly report to the county and for our own report as well. So in the report, you'll also see a supplemental schedule so you can see the actual transactions there. So in addition to taking that 10,000, doing that reclass of the 10,000, we also received a payment of $6,700 from Geico Casualty Company, which is the first payment on a claim for the property damage to the town's historic sign. So that has been deposited, and I understand from Reagan that there's a second payment that should be on its way for $4,350 for the second half of the claim that is for landscape repairs. So we'll be looking for that, and I'll let you know when that arrives. It should arrive soon, from what I understand. The other, let's see, newer things under taxes and permits revenue, the highlights primarily are sales tax received for January of 2643. Our use permits, we received $575 in March. For the B-Pol taxes, we received in March $10,099 from 18 businesses. So the filings for the 2020 B-Pol year, we have received 34 businesses and then in the amount of $35,203 for 2020 filings. From July through January of this year, we also received 2,600 for prior year filings that were late payments. That's going to be offset though. The prior year amounts generally get accrued to that appropriate fiscal year when we have the audit done. And that would also be true of refunds that would be related to the prior year. And we do have a refund that's been issued to a business that left the town in June 1st. So it's also a prior year accrual reduction. That's $4,542 that is issued. So the net reduction for B-Pol related to prior years is $1,942. So I just wanted to give you those details. They'll help with our budget meeting perhaps tomorrow. Under the contractual expenses account, for the month of February, the Community Hall Electric started going back up. That amount for February was $577. The Community Hall cleaning was paid for November through March for $500. And you'll see on the report, also reflected here is the reclass of the $10,000 reduction in the IDA grant funding expense. So the net of all of the additional expenses and the offset of the 10,000 reduction for the IDA grant is a negative 7,503. So because that's a negative, I wanted to make sure that I was providing you with the backup of why that looks different. So those are the highlights on the report. Additional highlights are, I put in the annual budget meetings, and apparently I didn't save them. So I apologize for that. They are as you received on the agenda from Amanda, and it's posted. The first work session is tomorrow night at 7. The second one is April 14th And the third one, if needed, is April 21st. And I'll correct the email, Amanda, to send it back to you. And I can send it to everybody so that it's correct on your email if you'd like. One other action needed is a roll call vote for the payment of the legal fees. We have 2 invoices. One is for the month of February for $1,150, and one is $50 for March. So that would be $1,200 total for the 2 invoices. And the primary purposes of the fees were related to use permit. Use permit issues. Excuse me.
I'll make a motion to approve payment of the 2 invoices to the town attorney for legal services in the total amount of $1,200.
Second.
Any further discussion? Do a roll call vote. Holloway, aye.
F. Ross, aye.
McDonald, aye.
Oh, aye.
Klein, aye.
Green eye.
Okay. Marilyn, anything else?
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
I will make a motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Anything else, Marilyn, at this time?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The citizens' remarks, we did not have anyone register. Brings us to committees, planning commission. Kathy?
We had a meeting the last Tuesday of the month. We had 2 applications on. One application is from Virginia Mercantile, which will be at 12644 Chapel Road. It is a request for a use permit to open a sustainable general store in Clifton. And based on the square footage and number of employees that will be present, they would require 4 parking spaces. Their hours are going to be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week. And we would recommend approval of the use permit. If there's any questions, the owner, Robin Moser, is available to answer questions.
What space is this?
I think it's the Robin, maybe you can tell us, but I think it's the old Clifton Cleaners.
Okay. And what was the parking allotment allocation for the prior usage?
Well, that was a very, very old use permit. And I think, and I don't have it, maybe Amanda could speak to it, but I think the Clifton Cleaners had 5 parking spaces previously. In any event, there should be attached and online with the use permit, a new parking tabulation, which shows that at the time of this use permit with all the vacant spaces, there are 57 used spaces out of 63.
57 out of 63, and you are rightly guessing what I'm asking about, which is what's the delta between the 2 uses, and it sounds like it might be a -1.
Right. I mean, I don't know that it matters, to be honest, because of all the other changes that have occurred.
Yeah.
When we had to, Amanda and I spent time before the meeting, planning commission meeting, making sure we had up-to-date data for all the changes and what we needed. And so right now, there are several vacancies. There's suite 203 that's vacant, and there's suites C and D that are vacant. And this takes up one of the vacancies. So I guess we'll see what happens as we proceed with other, they proceed with other leases and use permits, and what other changes occur there, quite frankly.
Well, and we want to have our fingers on the pulse on this issue and not be caught by surprise, either ourselves or the building owner.
No,
if we
there's no
run up
chance.
against it.
Yeah, there's no chance of that happening. Amanda and I have been in constant conversation with the leasing agent as well as with the building owner. Mr.
Okay.
Foley was present at the planning commission meeting too, and has copies of the latest data, et cetera. So everybody is on the same page, whatever that page turns out to be, but everyone has the same information.
So in the last
Okay.
minute, I just looked at the use permit for that space, which was the Clifton Cleaners. The use permit was from 2015 and there were 5 spaces allocated.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Okay, and I see the Mosers are on. If you want to tell us a little bit about your new business, we always like to hear from people so we can talk up what it is and get the word out there. So the floor is yours.
You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Still muted for some reason. Try
I
again.
think Robin, try your login is muted as well.
Does this one work any better?
Yeah.
I think they're both working now.
Well, there's an echo for sure.
Okay, now it works.
Oh,
Oh, now you turned off both of them.
All right, any better?
Now
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, we're gonna stick with the phone then and let the computer go. So we're happy to give you guys a little bit of background on us as a couple and on the business. So we have been in Fairfax as residents since 2010. We've been in Fairfax Station since 2017. We both worked up in this area for 20 years plus. Both of us have full-time day jobs, but this has been kind of a passion project we've been working on quite some time. About 7 years, actually. We originally envisioned it in a different area down on the Northern Neck, but we have fallen in love with Clifton, and when the opportunity arose, we thought this would be a good market for it. So it is a sustainable general store, thus the mercantile name, which is somewhat in line with that. With a little bit of a lot of things. We're heavily focused on Virginia local products. So we've been working to find vendors of unique little, we have everything from honey that is made in aquapon to jams and jellies and coffees that are roasted in various points around Virginia. I think we have 3 different whole bean coffees in stock right now. We have the merchandise for the most part is in the store ready to go. So this is the first time that we will be running a shop. It is a unique concept just to this area, but that has a lot of interest across the board, and we've been trying to talk that up as much as possible as well. So we feel very optimistic about it, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have as a group or as individuals.
Any questions from council?
What do you think your timing is?
We actually had hoped to open Easter weekend and didn't realize the cadence for meetings. But honestly, the time has been beneficial. So we've used every bit of it. We are more or less, we do still have a couple of key pieces. So our thought was if it is approved tonight that we would maybe open to a limited number of people like family and friends over the weekend, just so we can get our feet underneath us before we do a broader opening to the public. Especially with COVID, we want to see how the cadence is within the shop and make sure that we don't have any spacing issues, signage, making sure we have signage in the appropriate areas, et cetera. So we're thinking if at the earliest, it could be this weekend for small numbers of people, with the following weekend after that, more likely.
Great. Look forward to it.
On the question of signage, you're working with the Architectural Review Board?
Yes.
On that? Okay.
And it's a very good point because we're in between two, the ARB responded that their preference is a hanging sign. And we do have actually the mount that was used at Hydrangea. Jennifer provided that to us, but we can't find a great place to put it. So our original concept was to have a wall mounted sign in 2 spots on the building. Either one of those works for us. We have mock-ups from the company for both. It's just a question of the hanging sign and where it would go that would clear the walk area. That particular part of the building is a low ceiling height, a low roof line. So we're just a little worried that we've got to position it so that it's visible, but also that isn't going to obstruct anything. But welcome any thoughts on that as well. We haven't moved forward with either of those just yet.
Okay, the ARB is very capable on those issues, flexible. Everybody lives around the space and knows the space well. And signage is one of the most frequently addressed issues by the ARB. So I'm sure that with ARB, you'll be able to come up with a good solution for that. Just happy to hear that you're working with them, because sometimes people come in and inexplicably don't work with them. So that's good news. And we're here if you have any questions or anything like that. The council's here to help. We're always looking to help the business community and do what we can to foster a good balance between the residential community and the business community. So our doors are open, I guess. Probably in Clifton, our doors literally are open. But we are here if you have any questions or need anything or whatever we can do to help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I will make a motion to approve the granting of a use permit to Virginia Mercantile in Clifton House as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Any further discussion?
It
All in
would be,
favor?
I'm sorry.
It would be helpful. Is this on the motion?
No, I'm sorry. It would be helpful to have the suite numbers so that I can put that on the BPO, her business license. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the motion.
It's suite
okay.
F.
F, okay, great.
Yeah, Kathy, is it literally just F or is it 20 something F?
No, it says F on their application and also on the parking tabulation list, it says F. One of the things we did is we asked the leasing agent for a list of all current suites in use by their accurate numbers. So we had their numbers or letters and their square footage, which they did provide to us.
Okay, so this is suite F.
Correct.
Foxtrot.
So the motion would say suite F as part of the motion. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right,
Congratulations.
great, yeah, woo!
Thank you.
Gonna be open soon.
Our very own
Wait to
Rose
come down.
Apothecary.
Yeah, exactly. All right, excellent. Yeah, our own version. That's going to be amazing. Okay, well, maybe we can rename our town and put up a new sign like they have as well.
It's his sister, don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Kathy.
The next application was submitted by Mr. Setyawan for the business Motier, which, if you may recall, a use permit was previously issued for that business at 12644 Chapel Road, Suites A and B. It's where Bacon Brew or something, Bacon Brew was previously located. The previous use permit was a commercial use permit, basically for retail and takeout. Mr. Setyawan returned to us with a new use permit asking just for a restaurant use itself and not primarily retail takeout. And as part of that restaurant use indicated there'd be 4 employees on site at any one time and approximately 14 seats on site. Unfortunately, we had a short planning commission meeting because I needed to leave and I was essential to the quorum. So we didn't have a long discussion about it. But since it's a restaurant use, it does need to be noticed for public hearing, which will give, I think, everyone plenty of time to discuss, ask questions, etc. So we had moved to hold a public hearing at our next planning commission meeting. And I think what we had hoped to do here, just to smooth things forward, is also to have the town council hold a public hearing at its next meeting. Obviously, if this matter gets moved along pretty promptly at our public hearing, we don't want the applicant to have to wait another 5 weeks or 6 weeks in order for his public hearing and his chance at the town council meeting. So basically what we're here asking is that the town council schedule a public hearing at its next meeting, its May meeting, if that's doable.
And would information be available to the council members and the public so they would know what the public hearing is about, other than
Yeah,
just
I mean,
generally?
you have advertising, and normally in these instances, Amanda tries to get out emails to everyone in the town, letting them know, what's going on, and to please, if they're interested or have comments or want to say anything, to come to the public hearing so we can consider everything at that time.
And I'm willing to advocate for a public hearing of the council at our next meeting, but it would really be predicated on Amanda and yourself getting information out to the public and to us so we know what it is. Otherwise, I would expect to have a meeting where people tell us what on earth is being proposed and the ins and outs and the specifics, so that we could then know what people were commenting on. People,
Yeah,
so that's critical.
And absolutely, and for restaurant uses where we've had to have that work, or anything bed and breakfast use that's required a special use permit, we've always reached out to folks in town as best as we could, and haven't just relied on a matter of the advertising, but to actually send emails saying, hey, we've got a public hearing going on, and here's the subject matter, here's the application, and a brief write-up about it. And it's
Yes, it would be
actually
published in the paper. It's already published online. It would go out in an email, and it would also be posted to the bulletin board in the post office.
I get all that, but I would want this to go out like early, like a couple weeks before the meeting.
that would be fine.
Because people need to know, like, usually when we have these special use permits for a restaurant, people have been talking about it for 3 or 4 months. Everybody knows all the specifics, all the details. And when the public hearing time comes up, people are ready to talk. It's going to be noisy. There's going to be a lot of cars, whatever. They've had time to think about it. I think this one will be a surprise to people. So what we do not want is for members of the public to come back and say, you did what? How was I supposed to know about it? If we have information sent out to the group, we usually send it out, the notice is out 2 weeks in advance, and to the council, and we put it on the website. Then anyone who comes back and says, I didn't know, will say, well, the information was sent out, you had plenty of time to look at it. And we help, remember, here's the point. The public hearing is to get input from the public. If the public knows about it 2 days in advance, we're not getting any information, defeating the purpose of the public hearing, and frankly, undermining our role in what we're supposed to be doing for the public. So
The notice period is governed by the state code, so it will tell you in there
Yeah, I
Not,
get that.
not too early and not too late. And
No,
for
no,
2 weeks, so.
But we,
That's the public notice. I think
that's
Bill.
cool for the thing in the newspaper. I'm talking
Right.
about actually getting
Yeah.
real information
Well,
out to our people.
when do you want it sent out? I can send it out anytime.
2 weeks, at least 2 weeks.
Amanda,
before the
we can work and draft and send it out and also attach a copy of the application with the email. And that can be done at least 2 weeks before the public hearing, if not earlier. So that's
Yeah.
very easy to do and there's no problem. And we definitely will do that.
I just want the rules of the road clear because we don't want anybody saying they didn't know. And our public hearing was a charade because there was no information. That hurts everybody.
Agreed.
We just don't want that. So, yes.
Yes, hello. Hello, everybody. Yeah, just is it possible to explain to me a little bit more simple because I don't understand everything. Just I just lost about 15 months and I spent a lot of money and I don't know if I can how to say, I don't know. I need to survive to pay for my stuff and everybody. So how long will it take?
So it's a perfect question that feeds into exactly what my point is.
But Bill, Bill, just back up a minute. This is a little bit of an unusual situation because this is not really a new restaurant. Mr. Setyawan has a use permit that allows him seats,
Yes.
takeout. So he can be up and running any time
Okay.
because his
Yes.
use permit was primarily a retail establishment with a few seats that were incidental. Now, he wants to change and focus just on the restaurant and not on takeout and is eliminating that. So we have a business that's up and running. He actually can feed people at some seats as well as provide takeout.
So
So
I can
what
open,
this-
right?
That's right. You could open any time because your use permit was approved
Yes.
in March of 2020.
Yeah.
This is a change, and frankly, the big change here is that it won't be takeout, it will be dining inside,
Yes.
but the seat number doesn't change.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Yeah.
All right, I'll make a motion to authorize a public hearing of the town council at the next town council meeting, at the beginning of the next town council meeting, to address the request for a special use permit for MOTA at 12644 Chapel Road, Suites A and B.
Second,
All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, so we should have this done at the earliest possible date, assuming all goes according to plan. We're scheduled and ready. Okay? Anything else?
That's it for the planning commission, only those two applications.
Before we lose Kathy, if Kathy's going to leave, I'd like to ask a question with regard to the planning commission. We're going to be talking later about possibly changing the noise ordinance or adding to the noise ordinance with regard to the dumpster cleaning and all of that stuff, which I think.
I'll still be here.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I just didn't know whether if we're going to do or propose code, whether we ask the planning commission to do that or how we get that process started. That's all.
For the zoning code, which is chapters 9, 10, and 11, those code provisions by state law are required to be reviewed and proposed by the planning commission.
Okay.
If you want to change your cigarette tax ordinance or your noise ordinance, those are in different areas, and then it's up to the town council to decide what sort of working group to set up to draw up a new ordinance.
Thank you. You're muted, Bill.
Okay.
Oh, there you
Okay, very helpful. All right, is that it for the planning commission?
It is.
All right. Zoning administrator report.
Just give you a very quick update on 7184 Clifton Road, and that is that the situation is unchanged since last month.
Okay, thank you.
Commercial use permits, ongoing project, getting in touch with different businesses that need to get updated use permits. Everybody that we have contacted in the past few months has been really cooperative.
Oh,
So
that's
That's-
great, as it should be. We certainly appreciate when the community is, community members are responsive with regard to compliance. It's good for them and it's good for everyone. Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right, ARB.
I talked to Royce right before the meeting. He has family in town, so that's why he's not on tonight. The ARB did not meet in person last month, but they did look at and approve 2 sign applications. One was for the Clifton Cafe, which you may also see that they did remove some of the other signs that had not been approved. And the other application that they reviewed and approved was for Virginia Mercantile. And they've already got several applications on deck for April.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, as we have turnover, businesses leaving and businesses starting. We'll probably have a lot of signage changes, so that
Right.
the ARB will be busy, and we'll have to make sure that people are always reminded that they need to comply with ARB requirements. Always best to do it before. Rather
And
than,
again, we've sent out a few letters, letting people know of this sign that we don't have any record that it's been approved, or in some situations, letting people know not to put string lights on your signs. So those have been pulled down in at least one case. So as Royce describes it, it's kind of like whack-a-mole.
if people are not familiar with the string light issue, where you hang Christmas lights around your sign to make it really jump out at you, it's one of the things that is expressly forbidden in the town ordinance. It's not like you have to use your imagination or lighted signs. It actually says string lights because it was a hot button issue for the ARB. So they just wrote it right into the ordinance. That's why that issue, when string lights come up, letters go out. Okay, anything else?
That's it for the ARB.
Streetscape? Anything?
No change on streetscape.
Okay. And we did have that discussion earlier about the possibility of, maybe we should keep our eyes open for grant opportunities to help get streetscape off the ground, because there's no doubt that the utility part and the costs associated with the utility part and the uncertainty from the costs associated with it are, in my view, a bit of a stumbling block to actually green lighting project, which is otherwise, planned out and the design is complete, as I understand it, ready to go. But there's uncertainty associated with that. So funding opportunities would make a huge difference with regard to something that's very important in light of the current health emergency that we're in. Okay, on to actual business. The first item is nighttime noise from dumpster emptying and other activities at town businesses. This has come up for several months, And I know that Amanda's been looking into it and talking to people. As I understand the issue, at a broad brush, high-level basis, people understand that businesses need to do certain things during off hours and can't do them during the middle of the day. On the other hand, to the extent that that's being done at 3 a.m. or 2 a.m. or 4 a.m., that's problematic. In some cases, for the service provider, it's preferable to them to do it in the middle of the night, but unfortunately, in a close packed area with residences within 100 yards, it can be a problem depending on when it's done. So that's the sort of broad issue. And we've had a number of people come forward and talk about ongoing, not one time, but ongoing noise issues at some of the businesses. So I know that's been looked into. Steve, I think you and I think Amanda were looking into it. Do you have anything to report?
Well, I think we recognize there's a problem. We also recognize as materials that have been sent to the council members have noted the actual times when dumpsters are being dumped and an entire dumpster full of wine bottles makes a lot of noise at 4 a.m. And the same problem apparently also exists with the unloading of food and supplies very late at night or very, very early in the morning from large trucks with refrigeration units that just continue to run, and they're right next to residences. And I've looked at this. Amanda has been very good at contacting people. In fact, so far as I am aware at this point, many of the restaurants in town have not had a problem with this. I know, since I live right behind the store and the pub and the cafe, whatever you want to call them, that they've managed to get their dumpster emptied in the middle of the day. I mean, it is not an issue of having it dumped in the middle of the night. Every once in a while over at Trummer's, they'll dump a set of glass, but most of the time, because I've been tracking it, they're doing it in the middle of the day. The only one that isn't at this point that we are aware of is Villaggio. And therefore, Amanda has been talking directly with the folks at Villaggio to see whether there's something that can be done. And at the same time, we're looking, and I would recommend, this is why I asked Kathy, if this is not a part of the planning commission, that I would ask the town council to set up a committee to do this, to look at altering our code to adopt potentially the same code that Fairfax County has. I mean, the rest of the restaurants in Fairfax County seem to be able to do this. To not have this type of activity take place between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 or 7 a.m. And I think that's something we ought to look at because we're very small. This noise is very present. I'm sure Marilyn can tell you because she lives right across the street from it. And we ought to do something about it. It's just not, it's not like we are really hurting the businesses because we know the other businesses have been able to handle it. And we know that the businesses in Fairfax County have been able to handle it. So I suspect what's going on is that the dumpster companies and so on, because they can't do it elsewhere, are doing it in Clifton. And we shouldn't subject our residents to that. So I would like to propose having a temporary committee look at this for the potential of adopting a new code, either as a noise ordinance code or as part of the use permit code, because the use permit, as I think Jennifer pointed out to everybody, the use permit gives times of operation. And Bill, you just said, well, we all recognize that they operate outside the times of operation. And I think that's one of the problems. What's the point of having times of operation if what they're doing that is obstructing the neighborhood is outside of the time that they have a use permit to operate? So I think all of that needs to be looked at.
Steve, I would just add that many of the restaurant businesses also have as part of their use permit not to make excessive noise that affects the neighbors as well.
Yeah.
So something that's more specific would be very helpful, whether it's in the noise ordinance or the use permit ordinance. Clearly, and I know, having spoken to our town's council about this, since the restaurant use permits are special use permits, municipalities have a greater leeway in attaching conditions than to regular commercial use permits. If the town sets up a system and that would work, that we would apply pretty much to all the businesses with respect to delivery and with respect to dumpsters, because that's not something obviously the planning commission can figure out how to do, to be honest.
Well, I would like to look at it in a little bit more detail. We got one response, and Amanda, you can help me on this, from Villaggio.
Yeah, I wanted
saying
to
specifically that it would be helpful to them to be able to say to the company that they're trying to deal with. Apparently, the dumpster companies are not easy to deal with. That
Right.
we've heard from everybody.
So
And-
I will just say that the manager at Villaggio's has been extremely receptive and responsive, and we've been in contact several times, and he's been really proactive since he's heard from the town, and he's had reported to me not too long ago that he had made some progress with one of the trucks that comes by, in getting them to agree to not come before 7 a.m. And I think 7 a.m. is kind of the magic time period in the morning that would be ideal. So, and he continues to work with some of the other providers. And one thing that I heard from every restaurant that I talked to, I've talked to all of them, is that it's really hard to talk to a person. It's hard for them to reach a human being when they call their own providers. And even if and when they do, it can take weeks to get an actual change to happen. So even though it's been a month since we've all met and talked about this previously, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's been any improvement yet, just because it takes time. Once you reach out and connect with a human on at the vendor, then they have to work on how to reroute their services.
Right.
So I
Just wanted to let you know that I promoted Marcus to be able to speak.
And I think it would be very helpful to hear what Marcus has to say from his perspective with regard to Villaggio. So Marcus, if you'd like to speak, we'd certainly welcome your input.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Sounds great. So I guess I just want to start off by saying that not only as a business owner in town, but as a resident of the town, it's absolutely my pledge to want to do whatever we can to contribute to the quality of life of our neighbors and our fellow business owners. I'm specifically referring to Jennifer's complaint, our neighbor to the rear. In 2014, for example, she brought to my attention her disfavor of the parking lot lights. They were a little bit too bright. She wasn't a fan of those lights, both on the building and on the telephone pole. And we replaced them. We replaced the fixtures, the related bulbs. We went in with a softer wattage. Since then, Jennifer's brought to my attention her displeasure with the smoke that's emitted from the wood burning fireplace, the smokestack of miscellaneous delivery trucks that park under the trees, and of course, the various delivery times that occur during the early morning hours. My point in saying this is that if there's something that we can do, we will absolutely do it. That's my pledge to you guys here today, to my town, to my neighbors, to the town council. If there's something we can do, we will do whatever we can to oblige. There isn't a whole lot that we can do about Yeah.
I'm sorry. In the context of that, I did understand that your folks had said to Amanda that it might be helpful to be able to say to your vendors that this just can't happen, that this isn't something that you're trying to do, it's something that the town is trying to do.
I'm going to get into that, Steve. Because there's a few things that you said there that I just want to respond to as well. Regarding the delivery times, we've repeatedly brought this to their attention, and repeatedly the response to us is that these delivery times are routine for our industry. And part of the reason for those times is the regional traffic patterns that they have to conform to. And more importantly, as it affects us, is navigating the Bellagio, and I say this Bellagio / public parking lot.
Yeah.
By 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, our parking lot is 30 to 40% occupied, being that is generally used by everyone visiting the neighboring town businesses, such as the pub, the coffee shop, the restaurant, the wine shop, whatever it is. It's pretty much, you might as well call it general parking. So Steve, and I pivot to you because you mentioned a couple things, and respectfully, I just want to bring it, I want to highlight a few things. You mentioned that the restaurants in Fairfax County seem to be able to comply. I think that's what you said. You said that other restaurants in Fairfax County seem to be able to comply. Do you know that for sure?
No, that's
Do you
why
know
I
that as a fact?
No,
or
that's
are you
why I
speculating?
suggested we have a committee to look at it.
Okay. And then the next part of that is you also brought up, why do we have hours of operation? Well, I would ask the town, again, respectfully, how do you define hours of operation? Because we're not actually in the building operating, we're not running our business. These are times when deliveries are being made. But again, I just want to highlight the fact that this general parking lot. I ask you guys to come out, we'll work together, look at where the dumpster enclosures are, look at where those spaces are. How are these cars, small compact cars can barely get through this parking lot sometimes. How in the world are trucks going to be able to come through here, whether it's a tractor trailer, whether it's the liquor, beer, and wine supplier, whether it's our proteins, whether it's the fish, whether it's the dumpsters. And Jennifer will tell, I'm sure she knows this. God forbid those dumpsters don't get delivered for some reason because something is blocking the space. Somebody left their car there overnight or whatever reason. And that dumpster doesn't get dumped. A day goes by, 2 days go by, 3, and then the smell, then the stench, then the crows. So we're not like the other businesses in town. We don't have a space up on the hill like Trummers does that they can easily get a truck to and cars don't affect it. We're not like the dumpster behind the pub that isn't affected by, they can just navigate down Ford's Lane, pull in, get the dumpster, back out, and they're on their way. We don't have that luxury. Now, if we want to revisit where these dumpsters go, move it away from where it is now, I'm open to that as well. We can work together. But those are the challenges that we deal with at Bellagio, is the parking lot.
And I totally respect that, Marcus. I understand this is a difficult situation. That's why I am recommending to the town council that we have an ad hoc committee look at this to try to address all the issues that you just raised. I'm not suggesting, and I think Amanda made that just very clear, we have found the cooperation of your folks to be very good. And we know this is a problem, but it still is a problem. So we're trying to figure out a way to fix it.
Certainly.
Yeah, I would underline that what we're looking for is the art of the possible and what makes sense. Not any sort of draconian measure on the businesses. That's not in anybody's benefit. I would not support that. I would not advocate for that. But it seems to me that with reasonable people, given the specific facts and circumstances, and Marcus has identified some very important specific facts that are different. Everywhere in Clifton is unique. This situation is certainly unique. But we should look at it, as Steve started out with, there is an issue. there is an issue, and the question is, what can we do about it that's balanced and reasonable? We can always, as a government, step in and apply new rules. We could just take whatever Fairfax did and write Clifton and stick it in there. But I'm more of a fan of working together with our businesses, with our residents, to find a solution that works for everyone.
If we're all bought in, it's more likely to succeed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And listening to everybody and finding a solution that's workable. So I like Steve's idea of an ad hoc committee. Ad hoc meaning once the work is done, we don't need the committee anymore.
Right.
It's not some, strange name meaning it's not important. It means it's set up for a specific purpose. And I take from Kathy that ultimately it would technically have to go through and come back out of the planning commission if it's in 9, 10, and 11,
And I
which it
think,
probably would be if
and it
there's an
prob-
ordinance.
yeah, it probably would be since it's in, but I'm all in favor of doing a committee. I think it's an excellent idea. I know Marcus is focusing on Bellagio's, but I can tell you the dumpsters behind both the Clifton Cafe and the pub have all been challenges because unfortunately Ford Lane is generally not always navigable for the trucks
Yeah.
and the dumpsters. So I don't know Trummer's situation, but it strikes me at least 3 out of the 4 restaurants in town maybe need a more citizen-friendly possible way to do the dumpsters if that works for their business, So
Well,
that's
and
something to figure out hopefully with the participation, especially of the folks who have the restaurants.
exactly, fact finding that would be open to understand and ascertain the specific facts of each of the businesses, and this committee would be open to receiving input from these businesses. And in fact, the businesses, I think, would be welcome to be part of the committee. We can't force them to, but
Right.
would actually be welcome. And if we could, we would want them to be part of this committee that would together develop a solution or solutions. Steve, how do you propose to proceed? Everybody likes the idea. How do you propose to proceed?
I would just like the town council to authorize me to head an ad hoc committee to look at this issue of the dumpsters and delivery times and noise with regard to the restaurants in town. And let me try to put a committee together, as you said, including the restaurant representatives to see, and have a meeting or two and see whether we can start hashing this out. I'd like Kathy to help me, whether formally or informally on that, to keep it focused on whether it's within the context of 8, 9, and 10, or whether we do something else. But for the moment, just the authorization of an ad hoc committee that I can put together and keep the town council notified of the people who are getting together to talk.
So moved.
Move and seconded. I would only ask that you and Kathy, I'd want to make sure that you will take Ford Lane into consideration.
Oh, yeah.
In your views. Okay.
Have no fear.
Okay. I wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
We're living there.
Yeah, I don't know. Brant and Lucia maybe can be on the committee too.
No,
No, you don't.
Okay.
you don't want that.
And the kids. All right, just you guys. All right.
You don't want that.
Well, that's fair. I love Brant. And I love Lucia as well. And that would be quite a fun committee. But for now, only one per family.
It's an ad hoc committee. They have to break up after they're done. So with their work. So I don't think this will work.
That's right.
Fair point. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. This would be a committee headed by Steve, who will include people on the committee as he deems appropriate to include members of each of the businesses. to the extent that they're
Willing.
interested and willing to participate.
And presumably adjacent property owners.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Jennifer and Tom Barton, for example. Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion of that? All in favor, say aye, and then Pat will say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Good. Good. And Marcus, I appreciate your input. And the facts that you've put on the table are facts that only you would know. And therefore, the participation of you or one of your team members will be very important to getting the right solution, and one that when it comes up, you go, yeah, because you're part of actually crafting it. That I would highly recommend and encourage, and hope that you will participate, you or a team member.
I appreciate that. We're, as I said earlier, that's our pledge to cooperate and help in any way that we can. And we're certainly not going out of our way to try to create noise. So we welcome the opportunity and we'll help in any way that we can. You can count on that.
Terrific. Thank you, Marcus. We appreciate your input and your willingness to help, and your interest as a business owner and a resident to want to find a balanced solution to this. Okay.
I would just add one thing, and that is, Amanda, don't think you've gotten out of this one. You're part of it too.
She looks pleased. We can't hear her because she's on mute, but she's speaking with
Well,
her
I'm
eyes.
invested now, so I was going to be sad if I wasn't on the
Okay.
committee.
You won't be sad. You won't be sad. Well, I'm glad we can help keep you happy. This little gesture of having you participate in the ad hoc committee. Okay, on to much easier things. Replacement of town sign and repair of triangle. And I'll just turn this over to Reagan, then I have a couple words to say. Reagan, go ahead.
Sure thing. So we've gotten through the claim process with Geico for this repair. I'm pleased to report, due to the nature of the damage of the sign and the landscaping, we have two separate quotes that we touched on during the treasurer's report. Geico reimbursed us 90% of the sign replacement, quoting a 10% depreciation factor, and approved 100% of the landscape repair, which consists of the plantings as well as the stone wall that you see strewn about the triangle at the moment. We've received the check in the amount of $6,700 against the quote of $73.90, which was from DTI, Blair DeCidi's company, if you know Blair. And the landscape repairs quote came from LCS, a business right here in town, who recently just moved from the Buckley building over to the Clifton house. So we are ready to press ahead and authorize this work to be done. That gives us a 94% recovery in total. So there's a little bit of skin in the game for the town, but all in all, I don't think that's too bad of a thing. So I would I would make a motion that the council approve executing a contract with LCS for $4,350 for the landscape and stone wall repair, and approve the execution of a contract with DTI for $7,390 as proposed to replace the Welcome to Clifton sign.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about it. I will ask, just for the record, I assume the sign is essentially the same sign?
Yeah, the intent is to replace it in kind. I believe that they manufactured the first one, so it shouldn't be a stretch.
But it's not a new design or a new look or some aggressive new colors or something?
Now we're proposing it to be exactly what was there.
Okay.
Pretty much the same with the landscaping as well. We've coordinated with Laura a little bit on the final selections to those based on availability. But because it was only partially damaged, we kind of have to put back what was there pretty much. But as you know, as we get to the point of procuring the plant material, we'll just work within the budget to make it work.
Yeah, so the plants, some of the plants themselves may vary somewhat based on availability and naturalness or something, but basically the effort here is to put the triangle back to the way it was before the person had the unfortunate accident. And in fact, even better, because it'll be brand new. But that's the intent. There's no intent to change anything or make anything look any different. It'll be the same. And if you live through that effort, you'll know that we spent like 5 years or more developing that design and whatever. So there's lots of reasons to keep it consistent with what we had. And you know, it's aged well. It looks good. So it's to put up the same thing. So we have a motion and a second to execute the contracts, to do the work. Tell me about the timing, Reagan.
It's at the point that we can authorize this, they can get started immediately. So,
and when would they finish? Like within a month?
I would say within a month. I'll report back on that.
Okay.
I hadn't asked you a question, you know, based on how busy they are, et cetera.
Okay, in case
I think
questions come up.
I think it'll be done relatively quickly.
All right, so we have motion a second. If there's no further discussion, we can have a vote on it. Obviously, it's almost $12,000, which is being reimbursed in most part by the insurance company, but nonetheless, it's a significant contracts to cut. So we will do a roll call vote, and I will start. Holloway, aye.
Efros, aye.
McDonald, aye.
Oh, aye.
Line aye.
Green eye.
Excellent. Okay, and I just want to add that it was catastrophic what happened. If you saw the sign and you saw the accident, it was pretty incredible. I've never seen anything like that in the many years I've lived here. People usually run into cars on the right, stop signs on the left, fly off the road into the floodplain on the left. I've never seen anyone like hit the sign dead on like this. But I guess, you know, you can always hit green on the roulette wheel. And they did, but we acted very responsibly to get the information, to work with the insurance company, and the individuals still dealing with, you know, the fallout from the accident. And we wish them well with regard to that. And what we're doing here is acting professionally, conscientiously to bring the community back and repair the property damage. And it's been done, really, it couldn't be done any better, any quicker, any more smoothly or efficiently. And Reagan has played a large part in that. So exactly the way things should work, not a lot of outrage and screaming and crying and gnashing of teeth, rather just taking care of the issue.
I have a question. I missed the last meeting, so this may have been discussed. I know that when some of this stuff first happened, there was concern about sight lines and visibility in that area. Do we know if that was a factor at all in the cause of the accident or what caused it?
We do know what caused it. It had nothing to do with sight lines. It was at 1 p.m. on a clear day. And it was someone who perhaps wasn't allegedly may not have been fully paying attention.
Okay.
And someone from out of state, okay, not a local.
Ah.
So, you know, the first time we all came into Clifton and you got to that weird triangle thingy and you wanted to go straight, but told you to go right, you don't know what's going on. You know, your brain could easily like lock into just go halfway, which is into the sun. So really, it wasn't something where somebody said, "Oh my gosh, you know, if I'd only been able to see better." Now,
Yeah.
I will point out that we had our discussion about those speed signs, like the Jim Chesley signs, the flashing, and the newer version, like they have where I go in South Carolina, it flashes and goes too fast, slow down. You know, it really gets your attention. It would be helpful to everybody to have something that got your attention for people who are from Clifton, not from Clifton, whatever. That might have made a difference here, but it wasn't really a sightline thing. It's rather, think about it. You're moving, you're coming down a hill, 45, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's 25. But if you're not paying attention, it's still 45, and all of a sudden, it's a T going off a cliff. So it's not really like perfect. And again, that's not a sightline thing. It's just the way Clifton was formed. So I think, Daryl, your point's well taken that there are things that we could do.
Well, I was just curious because I know that concern had been brought up in the past, and so far a relatively incident-free area from a traffic perspective and accident perspective. So I was just curious if the first major incident had anything to do with that, and it seems like no.
It did not.
So
good question. Good question. We know the specifics. I spoke to the officer for some time about it. I know the details, but not something we want to.
No, I'm not asking to get into those details. I'm just curious.
But to the point, from a community perspective, was it something that was caused by sight lines? That does not appear.
Okay.
Does not appear to be the case. I certainly haven't heard any allegation that was the case.
Okay, cool. We can move on.
Okay.
I think it's important, you know, that this is certainly not the only incident at that spot, and you know, even more than the single sign and our sign that seems to be very well loved. It's also all of us that are at those intersections. So when somebody misses something, it's, you know, it's us, it's our families that are at risk because we're the ones that are driving there. So if there are others who might not be in this exact circumstance, but they're also coming into this space for the first time, that some small things that we can do to just make that more obvious, to make the T. I think you know, after this incident, when I came into town again, trying to have those fresh eyes again, looking for, you know, certainly there's a stop sign up ahead sign, but the idea of a T, you know, a T with a cliff on the other side, and you know, I think it's such a dramatic explanation of what it is, but it's certainly not clear as you're driving in that's what you're coming up on. So I think that there's, you know, this along with other places in Clifton, there are a lot of opportunities for us to have better signage and also to be able to collect some data about what's happening out there on the roads, and a lot of those speed readers can collect data. They can do the trick of making people aware of what's going on if they think that they might be driving the speed limit that's posted, and just have that sort of a check for themselves. would it work in this scenario? Probably not. But there are things that we can do to protect ourselves from people who are just unaware coming through.
Okay. Devereaux Station sign, the other sign that got knocked down. Reagan.
Yes, we've got a way ahead on that as well. Previously, the council authorized $2,200 against the costs to order it and get it installed. That's when I at least were under the impression that the $1,945 cost through the VDOT program to have the sign replaced included installation. I was later informed that $1,945 is to procure the replacement sign and the signpost, and that their cost was $1,300 for installation. They've got a contractor that does all the signage for VDOT that operates out of Richmond. They would be the ones to install it. We investigated whether we could get VDOT to install it for free due to the fact that the sign is not in the VDOT right of way. The cost has to be borne by the town. So I think that what we did is we decided to look for an alternate way to get it installed to see if we could avoid spending $1,300. I reached out again to Blair and DTI, and he confirmed that his company will do this installation for the total of $540, which includes removing the old bent post by cutting it off flush with the pavers and grinding it down and just filling it up with concrete. We don't attempt to dig that out, but just cut it off and leave it flush. And then that price is based on the assumption that the replacement sign will be placed somewhere in the Caboose Plaza where there are pavers. So that would cover that inevitability. If we move it off the pavers, I think it would be even simpler, but that would be further toward the track and off the plaza. And I don't know that that's what we want to do, but we've got several months between when I order this sign, once we approve the full cost, and to figure out exactly where we want to place the replacement sign. So I think in this case, it might be good to go above the actual estimate that we have in hand, which is $2,485, perhaps up to $2,750, just to cover any inevitabilities that come up. Part of that cost will be split to the new year budget because the delivery time for the new sign is months. I think it'll probably be late summer at this point, from what VDOT indicated last time I inquired. So we'll have the purchase of the sign that will come now. If we authorize the removal of the old post, we can get that out of the way in the short term. Perhaps when they mobilize to do the sign at the triangle, they could accomplish removing the old post at the same time. And then the cost for installation would come later in our new fiscal year. So I would make a motion to approve replacement cost of $2,750 for the Devereaux Station sign and removal of the old post.
Second. Any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Holloway, aye.
F. Frost, aye.
McDonald, aye.
Oh, aye.
Line aye.
Green eye.
Okay. Takes care of that. So you'll get moving on getting that ordered and it'll come in due course.
Yeah, we will put both of those sign projects in motion immediately.
Okay, good. Next item, new federal grant funding. We already talked about this at some length. Now that you've heard about it, does anyone have any additional questions or thoughts on it tonight?
I move we table.
Okay.
Do we need a motion for that? I mean, I think we addressed it pretty fully.
No, we it's on to discuss. We discussed it tonight as much as we wanted to, and we could certainly continue to have it on the agenda Amanda, remind me to put this on the agenda again next month, because this will be evolving. Oh,
We missed a
and-
sign thing, right?
and now I missed it. There's so many signs, many signs, and I missed a sign. Yes. Okay. So we have the text for the Harriet and William Harris sign that would go in Harris Park. The sign, informational signage, so when people go, who's Harriet and William Harris, they look down at the sign and they can read about it. And like the Civil War trail marker signs, there would be images on it, and we've identified images, historic images, maps and things like that that would go on it. We can come back and show the council that as well. And this is an authorization to actually go purchase a sign, not to come back just like we did tonight on Devereaux and the town sign. We'd have to come back to the council with a specific amount to procure a sign. We think we know about how much that's going to be, but I'd rather have it ready to roll before we come back and ask for authorization to spend money on it. But this is rather just to get the text nailed down. This has been going on for like 4 months, back and forth, around and round. And big picture, we had a long sign. It talked about Beckwith, and it talked about the Harrises, and it talked about, it's like a mini novella. And the Racial Justice Committee, one of their comments was, there's too much on your sign. The Harris sign, focus on the Harris people. The Beckwith sign, focus on the Beckwiths. So that would be different. But this is just the Harris sign. So this was chopped down to the material that related to the Harrises and has been through a filter many times. Reagan provided a couple of comments, commas, and changing the number 2 to the word 2, and which to that to fine tune it. And Amanda pointed out that perhaps the word formerly is not needed in one location. But otherwise, the language should be ready to go on this sign. So
Do we need a motion or?
Yes, we do. I'll make a motion to approve the language of the sign for Harriet and William Harris. Is there a second? Okay, and then any discussion? This is just on the language. It's not putting up a sign. We still have to come back. It's not the images for the sign, it's just the language.
Just a comment, and that is, I think you've done a great job on this. I know it's difficult. I know everybody had their own opinions and views and everything. And I think what we've ultimately wound up with is very, very good.
I agree.
I do have
Thank
a
you very
question.
much. Appreciate it. Lynn?
I have a question if this title that we're reading here was part of the, has been part of the iteration.
Yes, for 6 months probably.
Okay.
In fact, that's one thing that's never changed. The paragraphs below changed, and the paragraphs were tuned up, but the title's been the title for a long, long time. And the idea is, if we have a second sign, it would have the same first line and a different second line that would tie the two together thematically. So yes, the committee reviewed that and was comfortable with that as well. And while there are an infinite number of ways you could write something, this one's been looked at by a lot of different people and really thinking about having something that we could proudly have in place for many decades that would be educational and would be a first stop for people to begin to learn.
And if
Some
I'm
of
not
this-
mistaken, input from the descendants of these folks, right?
I believe so. certainly been many people. It's been shared and passed around, a lot. You know, I'm a big believer in transparency and getting input, but to that point, after some period, you eventually have to say pencils down. And that's where we are now on this after much input. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Fantastic. This is a great thing. We're way ahead of the curve on this. I think many other parts of Fairfax County, when they hear what we're doing here, I think are going to follow suit and are going to look for opportunities to do what frankly just came naturally to us because, and I have to again give kudos to Margot, who has been wanting to do this sort of thing for literally 20 years. Talk about somebody who's ahead of the curve. Margot's idea that we've all put into implementation. So it's a natural thing because it's part of our history and it's part of our heritage. This isn't reaching for something. This is the kind of thing we should do to talk about history. And along that point, kudos to Margot. My wife, Phyllis, who's here on the call, pulled out a clatter. We had some moving boxes that we hadn't unboxed from 20 years ago or something, some period. And we unboxed the Clifton Clatter from November 2020, November 2000, talking about a new idea that Margot Khosravi had come up with for something called a haunted trail. Kind of a strange new idea. I actually thought it was kind of wacky and out there, but I was like, hey, give it a shot. And that was another thing that Margot did. And Margot's made so many quiet but powerful contributions to the community that I just want to call out what she did there and what she's done here. And a lot of other people, Steve Jones and other people have been contributing to this. Bethany Latique was helpful in the wording and input to this. Daryl and many others, Lucia, many others. So much appreciated. And a community effort is the way to do things like this. So a good thing. And that takes us right to use of electronic document review and signatures for town documents, another interesting, exciting community endeavor. What this is Marilyn doesn't like having people have to come to her house and sign stuff. So she said, why don't we do electronic document signing? I said, I'll ask the council because I'm kind of okay-ish with it. But I'm not always okay with it. I do it when I have to. But obviously we have not historically done this, and everyone else in the world certainly does do it. It's not like it's some new concept. But before just unilaterally declaring a change, I thought I would raise it with the council so that if we go in this direction, we don't have to use it for everything, but if we go in this direction,
We have it as an option.
documents.
I would recommend that we do it retroactively back to when we started Zooming, because the ARB actually implemented this a ways back. Jeff Stein is, familiar with that very much, because it's all it's DocuSign is used in real estate extensively, so he has routed the ARB documents for signature using that already. So to make those legit, we should recognize that, I think, Bill, and the other committees should be encouraged to use it as well, not just for the treasurer.
And the irony of that is the platform we have been talking about using is a different platform. So what's helpful is we would not want to advocate that it's only a single platform must be used and only that is valid, but rather that we recognize the validity of the use of electronic document signature. So people generally comfortable with that. I like the idea where it's appropriate, as opposed to we mandate that nothing can be done without that, because I actually sign the use permits. I sign each and every use permit in ink. And I think there's some value to that, because these things are around for a long time, to show that originally, somebody put pen to paper on it. So there may be times where an ink signature is still a good idea. So I don't want to belabor this, but I also want to make sure that if we do it, people know and they're okay and on board. So thoughts?
I do it every single day. I think it's the way to go. I fully support it. Obviously, I agree with you. It shouldn't be mandated or required, but it should be. It increases accessibility. It reduces the amount of time it takes to get stuff filed and processed. Eliminates overhead and saves trees.
Mhm. I'd like to
Okay.
clarify that I don't mind people coming by my house to sign things. No problem with that. But when there are documents that require multiple signatures in different places on the documents, then this kind of technology is extremely efficient and helpful.
Yeah, to ensure nothing gets missed.
Mhm.
All right, I'll make a motion to authorize the use of electronic signatures for official town of Clifton documents, and agreements, including use permits and certificates of appropriateness, not requiring it, but authorizing it, and making such authorization effective as of the beginning of our electronic meetings under COVID, which is consistent with that approach.
Second.
All right, it's a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Motion carries. There's nothing else on the agenda, although we can always add something by unanimous consent if there is.
There's
anything.
one more thing. There's one more thing on the agenda.
Motion
right.
to adjourn.
Yeah, that's the one. Second.
Wait, did you make the motion? Or
I
did
make
you-
a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Meeting?
Thanks, everybody.
Good
See
night.
you tomorrow night.
Night.
Yeah,
Yep.
tomorrow night.
Tomorrow
The
night,
meeting
right?
is at
See you tomorrow.
7 o'clock. That's a little different than what we're used to. So
7 o'clock.
I have to keep reminding myself.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
We'll see you then.
Thank
Bye.
you all.
I'm back.